And good morning, everybody. We are live. Congratulations. You made it through the week. Another week of safe food, safe manufacturing, taking care of the public, making sure that everybody is happy and healthy. And if nobody else says it, because a lot of times they won't, Alex and I are going to say to you this day, good job. You did a really good job this week, and we're very proud of you. So if you're new to the chat, welcome. Pull up a chair. This is the Food Safety Chat Live. My name is Bryan Armentrout with the Food Leadership Group, and every week I bring an expert in food safety, quality assurance, and all such topics onto the show, and we talk about all things food safety. And what you'll notice here is that this is not a presentation. This is not a PowerPoint with all kinds of bullet points and blah, blah, blah. This is an interactive discussion. We want to provide a forum to share the information that we've been lucky enough to acquire through sometimes luck and sometimes just bad mistakes, and learning from those and helping to create that food safety community out there. Because as we say on the show often, food safety is not a point of competition. So make sure and give us your comments as we're going through our topics today, and let us know what you're thinking. We love to see that. And with that, I'm very happy today to bring on, this guy's super cool, Alex Hanley, who is the founder of navigatefoodsafety.com. Alex, how are you doing today?
Excellent, Bryan, excellent.
And so one of the traditions we like to do here on the chat is help to place people around the world, because one of the amazing things you'll see here in the comments, Alex, is we get people who contact us and who participate in the chat from all over the world, which is awesome. So I am in beautiful Loveland, Colorado, and this is a fantastic time of year here. The leaves are starting to change. The aspens are pretty golden colors in the mountains, and people go up on the weekends and look at them. At night, the temperature gets down to around, I think last night it was around 50, we'll call it 60 degrees Fahrenheit, which is approximately 15 degrees centigrade. And I'm translating to centigrade because Alex is in beautiful
Prince Edward Island. I'm in Prince Edward Island on the East Coast in Canada, where the weather is quite nice, but it's just starting to get cool, I suppose, as everywhere else. And yeah, I'm done stacking my wood for the winter. That's what it is.
So do you stay there year round then? And
yeah,
or do you
stay there year round? And it's fun fact: the motto for Prince Edward Island used to be Canada's playground. So it's it's an extremely lovely place. It's quite a small province. It's the smallest province in Canada. There's only about 140,000 people in the whole province. So it would make for a small. It would make for a small town. So it's a very small province in itself. But it's got all the benefits of being small. So like life is a lot more. The pace is a lot more human, if you want. And we're not that far from the rest of civilization. So that's good.
I like that phrasing. It's more human. I like that. So I was looking at the island on Google Maps, and it appeared, I may be wrong on this, is there one main bridge that goes to the island, or are there more?
Yeah, there's a bridge that, like, it used to be the longest bridge in the world for a little while. So it's been there for about, I think, a little over 20 years. And it connects the island to the mainland. I think it's 16 miles or something like that. But I'm not in charge of numbers, so it's about a 20-minute drive across the bridge. So it's a pretty long bridge.
And I can imagine in the winter when it gets, the wind is, it's icy outside and things like that. Oh my goodness, that would be scary.
Well, winter is cold, but because we're basically in the ocean, the wind is almost more of a challenge than the cold. So actually, the bridge is periodically closed to high-sided vehicles because you don't want them to topple over into the ocean. So so it is challenging indeed.
Definitely. So as we can see here in the chat, Alex, people are coming in, and we're very fortunate here to have people who participate almost every single week. So Cheryl, Ryan, Tim, Sanal, Austin, of course. Thank you everybody for coming in. And of course, right, this is an hour out of a work week. So this is a significant investment for people. So we're very appreciative that you're willing to join us for this chat, and hopefully we're providing good value for you. So one of the things, Alex, and I'm guilty of this, is I always want to jump into our topic because during our prep call earlier this week, it was just this amazing flow of information that we had going, and I want to continue that right away. But before we do, everyone, please join Alex and I for a drink of your favorite beverage, depending on where you're at in the world. Cheers. Nice coffee for me this morning. So definitely. So because you're new to the chat, one of the things I like to do on here as well, Alex, is kind of tell people a little bit about Navigate Food Safety and what you guys do.
Certainly. Well, I suppose I started as before founding Navigate, I started as a food safety auditor. Actually, I was an organic farm inspector before I was a food safety auditor, and then I kind of stumbled on food safety and got very excited about that. And I was an auditor for a while, and then I realized that auditors I thought they could be better set up for success. I thought we needed more support. And so one of the things, like Navigate is an independent company, independent from the CBs and the CPOs, and like we act in the certification world as many others, but we're independent. And a lot of what we do is we develop training for the various stakeholders in certification. So for food safety professionals, for food safety auditors, but for people who are engaged in different ways with food safety, maybe some people who are not necessarily, for whom food safety is not their main area, like a plant manager or a supervisor or a maintenance manager or an operator. All these people, they play a role in food safety, but it's not their main area. They also need to, how would I say, they need to be set up for understanding what is required of them, but not kind of the fire hose approach of all the things that we could talk about food safety that doesn't necessarily apply to them. So that's what we do. We develop training to support the industry. That's one of the things.
Yeah, because I mean, really, and everything we're talking, every different type of discipline in companies has their own language, right? So the procurement people have their terms, and the logistics people have theirs. Auditing is no different. So when we talk about CBs, right, certification bodies and accreditation and compliance,
certification programs, like
all these things, right? And so if you're outside of that bubble and that world, to your point, Alex, you're a plant manager, and we start talking all this stuff, you can kind of see them in their desk, kind of doing this, right? Right, and because it's not right, it's not budgets and pounds per man hour and all of the things that plant managers, to your point, focus in on every day. So we have to be able to communicate with them and work with them so that they understand why all of this is so important.
Well, that's very interesting. One of the things we're not going to talk about today is we're working on a lead auditor refresher training right now, and that's not our topic, but it's very interesting because you're bringing a point that we're talking at length about in that training. Is when we interview people, we need to be talking their own language, and it's not talking Chinese or Spanish or French or English. Like I need to talk maintenance with maintenance if I want to be doing a good audit of the maintenance department. I need to speak I need to speak management with a plant manager. I need to understand the difference between a risk to food safety, a risk to certification, and the other type of risks that a plant manager would have to manage. They need to be efficient with the resources they have. So if I'm coming in and just so focused on food safety that I'm creating red tape, well, red tape is inefficiency, and it is a huge risk that the plant manager has got to be aware of. And if I'm not aware of that, then like we're speaking different languages, and the conversation just doesn't flow. We're too solitude. So it's not it's a very good point.
Well, and I like how you're phrasing that as well, because the entire objective of what we're trying to do with this is to improve the plant and make things better. And if you're not able to communicate that information outside of the technical world that you're living within, you're not going to succeed. You have to be able to communicate that information. I was thinking of an example from all of our lives. If you, for example, go to the local mechanic to fix your car, and you go to the mechanic and you say, oh, my car's kind of making a clunk clunk noise. It's coming from underneath or whatever, right? The mechanic's going, okay, this person doesn't know anything about cars, and I can pretty much tell them anything I want. You're at their mercy. If you go to a mechanic and say, yes, I'm hearing a slight rattling coming from underneath, I believe it may be tied to the CV boots in my front suspension, or it could be a potential issue, maybe just with the linkages on my catalytic converter. Oh, right. Now the mechanic understands that you speak the language of cars, and they understand that they need to act appropriately in those situations too. Now, I'm disparaging mechanics. 99% of all mechanics are good, honest people, just like us, trying to do their best. But that example, right? There's that 1% out there who can take advantage, right? You need to speak the language. And with that, kind of the first thing is, one of the guests I love having on here as well, Alex, is Jose Sabal, and he has drilled this into my brain. Is whenever we talk about a topic, Jose now talks in my ear and says, okay, Bryan, you need to define terms. What are your terms of what you're talking about? So the first one really is when we say auditing, Alex, what do we mean by auditing?
Well, so auditing is a verification activity. So we talk about verifying. So we do something and we want to verify that what we're doing is actually what we said we'd be doing. Now, there's different types of verification. If I'm managing a department or if I'm supervising a department, part of my job is to verify what's happening. Auditing would be different in the sense that we are verifying the work of somebody else, if you want.
Mm-hmm. No, that's great. I mean, that's a nice, succinct definition. I love that. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Just to continue, there could be internal audits and external audits because we're talking about that. So internal audits would be somebody from the company. So it could be somebody else on my team. It could be somebody that we hire for ourselves. Could be somebody from corporate coming in to do an audit in our facility on our own behalf. And then an external audit would be somebody that would be outside of our company. So it could be a second party, one of our customers coming in to audit us, or it could be a third party, which would be somebody independent of the manufacturer, let's say, and independent of the customer. So a third party coming in to do an audit. So that's that.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, a good way to think about this, right, is one of the we all have kind of like internal benchmarks as people of what we consider to be good qualities to have. And one of those qualities, Alex, is I'm a man of my word, right? Yeah. You should live by that rule. And as part of that, part of your internal monologue is I do what I say I do, right? I don't go back on my word. If I'm going to do something and I say, Alex, I commit to doing this with you, that I'm going to do that, right? And let's say, for example, then that I say, hey, Alex, come on the chat here on Friday and we'll have this great chat. And you're like, yes. And you're ready for the chat and you're getting all ready and I don't show up, right? And you're like, oh, right. Now you've learned something about me. I'm unreliable. I'm untrustworthy. And the next time I come back to do something with you, I say, oh, Alex, so sorry. I forgot about last week. I went out drinking the night before and I was too hungover to, I forgot about it. I'm sorry. It'll never happen again. Right. Now you're looking at me going, I think I have other things I need to do. Right. So you're evaluating my trustworthiness relative to this. And auditing is the same way. Auditing is going out and saying, okay, here's what you say you're doing. Are you really doing this? Yeah. Yes, I am. Great. Show me some evidence that that's what you're doing. And that's all auditing is. And you always need to understand kind of that frame of reference of what is it that you're auditing against? And a lot of times people get these things mixed up. So if you are doing a worker safety audit. So in the US, OSHA, Occupational Safety Group, that is the frame of reference. So if OSHA was to come in, they have their standards of what they're auditing against. To your point, Alex, if you're auditing to a GFSI standard and an SQF auditor comes in, you're auditing to that standard. You always need to understand the frame.
You're auditing against the code. And we were going to talk about internal audits, and there's a big difference between internal audits and external audits in that respect, because in an external audit, you're usually auditing against an external standard. So it can be a standard benchmark to the GFSI, like the SQF code or any of the other benchmark standard. If you're doing an internal audit, though, you should be auditing against your own programs. So there's a note here from Ryan who says auditing, explain what you do and prove it. And I would say that those are two different tasks. Like the first one is explaining what you do. Basically, you take those external standards, because you might want to, so you need to meet the like FSMA in the US. You need to meet, let's say you're going for a benchmark standard. You've got different imperatives, different objectives, and then you take those and you include all that in your own programs. So that's one step. That would be the explaining step. So that's the developing programs. And then you implement that. And then you verify if you're actually doing what you said you would be doing. And that verification, like part of that verification is auditing. Like when you were talking about the example of here's what I'm going to do. Like in food safety, we always say trust but verify. That's a very big motto of food safety certification, and auditing is the verification part. So we can do that through different means. We can look at records, we can interview people, we can do inspections, we can do traceability exercise, and so on and so forth. So there's many methods that you can use, but all those actions can be used for auditing.
Absolutely. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say one of the things we talked about during our prep call is that the tasks that we do for auditing are not necessarily what defines an audit is not necessarily the tasks themselves. The tasks of auditing can be the exact same tasks as the tasks of managing. So if I'm in my department and I do an inspection, I'm verifying, but it's not an audit because it's in my own department. If I'm monitoring my team, just making sure that they're following the procedures, that they're following the rules, that they're doing the work as the company has developed those, then I'm supervisor, I'm supervising, I'm managing, I'm not auditing. If I'm looking at the records that my crew brings back, my records, I review them at the end of the day, I'm supervising. I'm still verifying, but I'm doing that in my own department. But in auditing, I could do the exact same thing in your department, or you could come over and do it in my department. So the tasks is exactly the same, but because of that independence, then it falls into auditing.
And I want to make sure that everyone paid close attention to what you just said, because it's really, really important. Because one of the things that we're talking about here in this chat is how do we bridge that gap between the importance of audits and what people who are doing other tasks in your facility are doing. So the plant manager. So if you can explain to the plant manager that your internal audit program is no different than all of the measurements he's using to manage his team, he's going to get that, right? Because think about this piece too. When you do, let's say that you have a team of people in your plant, Alex, you're working in the plant and you have 5 or 6 people who work for you. And once a year, you're required to give them a performance review. What's a performance review? It's an audit, right?
Yeah.
You're saying
you're verifying the competency and the proficiency of your team. So if you can do that with your own team, and you can look at somebody else's team, you're not going to be as detailed because you don't speak the language of maintenance the same way as you speak the language, let's say, of quality or whatever. So we're not going to be as thorough, if you want, in verifying the work of our colleagues, but we should know, like, some of the skills are transferable. We understand, if we know how to do a performance review, we should understand what our colleagues should be doing. We can't be as detailed in the evaluation of the crew, but we know if they've gone through the steps, which is what we're verifying. We're not verifying that they've actually identified to the nth degree the skills and the proficiencies of their own crew. We're just verifying that they've actually done the work, if that makes sense. That's what auditing is. Yeah.
No, that makes total sense. And it's a transferable skill set. So when you're talking with people that you want to join your internal audit team, this is one of the incentives you can give them as to why it's important to have this skill set, because every good manager has measurements and metrics and performance objectives that they are taking care of. Internal auditing provides you that same skill set. Now, part of this as well is that audits need to be looked at in layers. And so kind of the way I was thinking about this, Alex, as we were preparing is there's different types of audits with different levels of risk. And kind of that first one is what we're talking about now, which is the internal audit.
Yeah.
And the risk to your business is relatively low. The objective in internal audit is to find things that aren't going the way you think they should be going before someone else finds them. So go ahead.
You might say before someone else finds them, but sometimes, like, I just wanted to kind of add that people can find them in various ways. It could be found during an external audit, which you don't want to happen. You certainly want to find those things that are not working before somebody finds it in their, muffin or in their, because if they find it that way, then it's a bigger issue.
Right.
People can find problems through a food safety incident that eventually leads to a recall. And that's why we build all our programs and we have our food safety management system to avoid those situations. So when you're talking about the layers, something being found during an external audit is a layer before something being found in the market.
Mm-hmm.
To add to
exactly. Yeah. So kind of the next bucket that I came up with for audits is what we've been talking about, which is third-party audits. So someone else is coming in, like Alex is coming in to audit your facility. He's independent of your facility. He's performing an accredited or a non-accredited audit. It doesn't really matter, right? He is coming in with a standard, has been given an objective, a scope of what he needs to look at. And then that information is being provided back to the company and to other stakeholders who are interested as well. So there's more risk with that. So if Alex comes into the facility and sees something really terrible, let's say that he's in the production floor and a mouse runs across the floor in the middle of the floor, right? And the facility fails the audit, right? That's higher risk. You obviously never want that to happen. But with that third-party audit, that's kind of that next layer of auditing, right?
Yeah. And there's a risk there, and the risk is really a business risk because everybody needs to, in today's world, like a GFS, a certification is, there's a difference between being committed to food safety and being committed to food safety certification. So you're managing food safety here, you're managing kind of your relationship with your customers and the confidence, the trust that your customers have in your own product. So if you fail a certification audit, everybody's going to know about it. And in that sense, there's a bigger risk to the business. Back to what the plant manager is managing. Plant manager is managing, not just making sure there's no product contamination, because if the mouse runs on the floor, well, as far as we know, we don't have any proof that the food has been contaminated. In a way, we could imagine all kinds of things, but in a third-party audit, we have to work with facts. So what we saw is a mouse on the floor. We didn't see the mouse in the soup. So we have to say there was a mouse running around. No, but really, it's a big difference. And so this is what we saw, and that's the issue. Like, could it be that something worse happens? Yes, it could, but we're going to rate it this way. Everybody's going to know about it, and then we're going to, the phone is going to start ringing, and we're going to have some difficult conversations. So indeed, the risk is higher there. But I mean, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah, and so with those third-party type audits, there's a couple of, you're getting the certification so that your sales team can go out and get new customers and say, hey, look how good we are. We have all these good programs in place, and this third party came in and looked at our stuff and verifies that we're doing a good job. Sometimes even though customers will come in and say, okay, yeah, I get that you've got all these things, but we're extra cautious. And if I'm going to purchase from you, I want to come in and audit your facility, right? So even a little more risk, because if that customer comes in and says, wow, okay, I don't like what you're doing here. We're never going to buy from you. That business is done, right? It's done. So very high risk there. And so kind of for me, the highest level of risk then, because they have the biggest, ability to hit you, are regulatory audits. So USDA, FDA, CFIA, these guys come in, right? They can shut you down, right? And say, no, that mouse running across the floor, you're done. We're pulling your registration, and we're going to issue a regulatory letter, and you're in big trouble.
Yeah. From a business standpoint, the like a customer can say yes or no, can order or stop ordering. And that's from a business standpoint, you're totally right. Like, regulatory can come in and shut you down, and that's, you know, that
Yeah.
hurts.
And so part of that,
we're not gonna buy from you.
yeah, versus you shut down.
Third-party audits, they can say, like, the auditor can say, well, I don't think that's good, and everybody's going to hear about it, but you don't know that the orders are going to stop or not.
Right.
And so the point of the internal audit from that standpoint is to make sure that none of that ever happens.
Right.
And the promise of, like, the thing about the Global Food Safety Initiative is they work with a management system, and the management systems approach, the promise is that if you understand the risk in your process and in your facility, and if you put measures in place, so controls that manage all those, like, that are appropriate to the risk level of each of those risks, then those issues won't happen. Because what the third-party auditors and the second-party auditors and the regulatory inspectors or agents want, they all want you to know what could go wrong and to have measures in place to manage it. And if you can do that, then you do it well, then none of the other people, like none of the external stakeholders will be, they'll all be very happy, because that's what they're all looking for.
Yep.
There's a lot of different layers, but everybody's got, like, food safety is basically food safety for a given category, if you want. So
exactly. And that's a good point, is that risk by category changes. And you need to approach your programs, which is the entire point of having a robust food safety program, to your point earlier, is, you need to understand that risk. So relative to your internal audit programs and things like this, we're trying to paint a picture here relative to the strategy. I mean, we have a very sophisticated audience who tunes into the chat, but what we're trying to communicate here is you need to have this layered approach of internal audits, customer audits, third-party audits, regulatory audits, and how you approach those and manage those is absolutely key to your success. And I think Sonali has done a fantastic job. I think I owe her $5 of setting up our next category here, where she says, I think it's important to have an interdisciplinary internal audit team with auditors from maintenance, production, quality, et cetera, to do the physical audits of the facility. What do you think of that, Alex?
Well, I mean, Maureen commented it's music to our ears. One of the big differences in the training that we develop, what we absolutely 100% agree with that. And one of the big challenges, to continue on that, one of the big challenges the industry has had is, typically we work in silos, and typically quality does the audit, and it's been very hard to engage other departments into the audit process. There's many reasons, one of which is we want to, in a way, audits are often taught from a very nerdy, if you want, standpoint, very, very focused on using quality language rather than conversational language, very, very theoretical rather than being practical, very extremely thorough, and often very, very far from what a manager or a supervisor does every day. So what we say is we need the whole team, engaged in managing food safety every single day. And audit, having a multidisciplinary audit team is just one of the ways to ensure that all the managers are committed to food safety every day. It's not a matter of signing a piece of paper. It's not a matter of doing a big wah-wah. It's in my department, I know what needs to happen, and I make sure it happens every single day. And auditing is a great way to cross-train and demonstrate commitment and yada, yada, yada. But for that, we need methods that a maintenance manager can relate to. So if we say, okay, part of what we're going to do is, like, part of auditing is inspecting. And if the first stage is to have people involved in inspection, and that's where we're at, well, that's good. Like, if we want, the most complex audit method is a process audit, where you look at a process, let's say the allergen control program, and it's a 20-page document, and it's extremely complex, and there's things happening in every department, and everybody needs to know something about it. And you start asking different questions to different stakeholders, and that's more than the average maintenance manager is going to be engaged with. It's a lot more than that. So if we build the skills towards that, then eventually they might play a role in that. But if we just say, okay, we're here, and this is where we want to end up, it's going to take a long time, and usually the audit program kind of never takes off, if that makes
Right.
sense. So saying, okay, let's get involved in an inspection. Let's do a vertical audit, which is really kind of looking specifically at records, and it can be done very quickly. And those are the kind of things where it's easier for somebody who's not a food safety professional to get engaged in auditing.
Exactly. Well, and yeah, I mean, if you want to clear a room quickly, go into it and say, hey, who would like more work? Right? Poof.
Everybody's so busy. Everybody
Right.
already has,
And so there's an
so
important lesson. One of the things that we talk about here on the chat quite a bit, Alex, is that there's two main buckets you need to be thinking about in your career. Is all of these technical skills and all of these things that we develop that we're very good at, right? We're technical, analytical people, and we get all of this stuff. But as important, and I would argue more important, is the people skills, the ability to persuade and influence. Because look at this from the plant manager's standpoint. Let's say that you and I are working in the plants, and I'm the quality manager, and you're the maintenance manager, and we have other managers there as well. He understands our particular roles and what we're responsible for, but he needs more than that. That plant manager needs a team. They need a group of people who are helping him run the plant. And if I come in with the attitude every day of, I'm the quality manager, all I care about is quality, you're the maintenance guy, you do your stuff, I'll do my stuff, and no. And
especially if part of your job is to say all the time that I'm not doing my job well, it's not going to
exactly. And
be fun.
Yeah. And so part of having a successful career and advancing is understanding that key fact is that the farther you advance in your career, so supervisor, manager, director, vice president, as you move up, your vision expands. So if you're the vice president of quality in a company, yeah, you're responsible for quality, but you're also helping to run the company. And that includes operational budgets, cost-saving initiatives, customer acquire, all of these type of things too. And you need to understand those roles. If you can show that value to your plant manager and work with your fellow managers to explain to them why this is important for their careers as well, you're going to get that team.
Now you're setting the stage for another topic that we bring. Like some people think that you have a food safety team. And we always say, well, you don't really have a food safety team. It's a nice concept, but a management team manages everything as a team, which is what you've just been talking about, Bryan. Like as a VP of quality, you are part of budgeting. Well, that's part of managing everything. So if we look at the plant management team as the senior leadership team at the plant, so that the plant manager and their direct reports, so that all the area managers, if we say they manage everything together, and the goal is for them to manage food safety as one of their business imperatives, but it's not going to be the most important business imperatives. It's just one of them. It's not the least important. It's extremely important. But from their standpoint, they've got to keep 10, 15 balls in the air, and that's one of them. And EHS is pretty important too. And productivity is very important, because if we go bankrupt, like nothing else happens. And human resource is pretty important, because you can get in a lot of trouble with that. So it's not a matter of comparing one with the other. It's a matter of saying, how do we make sure that as a team we maintain food safety above, like that we're safe every single day. That's the vision. And I think it fits perfectly with the vision you were describing. And I think internal audits are a great way for a management team to get the understanding that they need to make sure that they're always above that bar. But also, if they take ownership of food safety, which they don't need to take ownership, they just need to wake up and recognize that they have ownership, because they're responsible for everything that happens in the plant. Once they get that, then they say, okay, well, I understand what being responsible for food safety means. Then they can do it their own way, and they can make sure that it's very well married with all the other balls they have to maintain, they have to keep in the air, with all the other business imperatives that the company has.
Yeah, absolutely. And it helps, and this is part of the selling point of this as well, is it helps to teach and train the other managers on the skill sets that we have in what we do, which is observation, right? So very often we tend to get buried, as we've been talking about a lot in this chat, in our work. And if you can, for example, Alex,
Yep.
teach the maintenance manager the importance of this and internal audits and understanding that we're doing what we say we're doing and all these type of things, that has side benefits as well. So for example, let's say you as a maintenance manager go back and walk into your shop. And now normally you just walk through the shop and you really don't pay attention. You go to your office. Now you walk into your shop. There's no audit going on. You just walk into your shop and you look around and you go, this place is a freaking mess, right?
Yeah,
There's
exactly.
metal shavings on the floor. Those could get into the product. Hey,
Yeah,
hey, hey guys, come
when
here.
are we supposed to clean up the shavings, or like, oh,
Yeah.
you've worked on one of those tooling equipment, you're supposed to clean right after. If I know that, then I can hold my own team accountable. But if I don't understand that, then I can't hold my team accountable. Maintenance manager, well, if they need to build racks to store their supplies off the floor, instead of having all that metal in a corner where rodents can come in and nest, well, they've got the power. They're in charge of that. But to your point, if I'm the maintenance manager, nobody's going to understand equipment half as well as I do. So
Right.
in terms of identifying risk of contamination with the equipment, where can there be a kind of a fluid leak, like either a lubricant or like any other chemical leak, I'm probably going to know much better than anybody else. Where is there a risk of metal to metal contamination? Very specifically, I know that better. Where, so the better as a maintenance manager I understand what we're looking for as a team, the better I can contribute to other meetings. Like when, if I'm forced to sit in the HACCP meeting, which I should be forced to sit on, to make sure that the hazards have been identified. Well, rather than just be kind of a very superficial hazard analysis, we can delve into the nitty gritty of what are the specific areas in the equipment that can lead to a product contamination. And then we can make sure that we don't have just a generic, we have a preventive maintenance program, as if having a preventive maintenance program ensure that we've taken care of the thousands and thousands of specific areas where things can get contaminated. So I suppose the point I'm trying to make right now is that an internal audit gets me engaged and gets me a better understanding as a maintenance manager of what the tasks of managing food safety is and what it means for my own department. And then I'm enabled to contribute what I should really be contributing, which is my expertise in maintenance to risk management or identifying risk through HACCP in this case. And it's very kind of, I don't want to say justifying, but it's very, it's so much more interesting for people, and it's so much more value. I feel so much better when I have a meaningful contribution to the team than when I'm forced to sit in a meeting and I don't understand what's going on. And at the end of this meeting, I say, yeah. And, it's not the alternative of understanding and being engaged is so much more productive. And from a human standpoint, it's better. Yeah.
Absolutely. Right. And so look at the two juxtapositions here of what we're trying to communicate. The first position is, hey, Alex, I'm Bryan. I'm in charge of quality here in the plant, and I am required to do internal audits, and you're on the team, and I require you to do these activities, right? You're gonna be like, okay,
right.
What you were just saying.
Yeah.
Versus me coming to
you. I have so many other things to do. I don't have time for that. And really, like, there's no point. You never find anything. It's just a waste of time. And like, that's what I would say, wouldn't it?
Yeah. And then now as the quality manager, I'm reduced to, please come on the food.
We're going to make it a KPI. And if you don't do it, so you're either going to be begging or you're going to be threatening, because those are the other,
Yeah. And so what we're doing here is we're giving everybody on the chat ideas on how you can persuade and show that other person why this is a benefit to them. Everybody, who's the most important person in the world, right? That person, they're thinking about that all the time. You need to be able to communicate them and show you the benefits of how this helps them, how this makes their life better, how this helps to contribute to the plant, how this helps have a fruitful future for all of us, and we'll have more customers than we can possibly imagine if we do these things. You have to show them.
Yeah. So like, I suppose in order to convince people, there's always two ways. You can show the benefits or you can remove the obstacles. Some of the
Yeah.
obstacles we've talked about, like if audits are painful, if it's complicated, if it's disconnected from what I know, if the curve for me to learn how to audit is like this big, well, it's a much harder than if it's a jump from here to here. Like if it's a little step that I've got to take, I'm a lot more likely to be part of it. So
Yeah.
If I'm asked to take 5 hours out of my day, well, it's not the same thing as if I'm asked to take a half hour out of my day once a quarter. So like,
Yeah.
to that point, one of the things that we learned through our internal auditor training is that the rollout program is as important, if not more important, than developing the actual training, because there's no sense having great training material if the people are not engaged and they're not, like, if it's not easy enough for them to do. So we need to remove obstacles, and then we need to show the benefits, and really showing benefits. Like, we need to understand what do people want. Like, people want to perform. There was a comment right here from Bryan who says, if our GFSI audit has always been really easy because our internal audits were really strong. And that's a huge benefit. Like, if you're not going to be afraid of a third-party auditor, which a lot of people are, and a lot of people spend a lot of time, they do huge cleanups, and they're like, it feels really, really painful, a third-party audit. Well, if you've got some really strong programs to, I don't want to use self-policing, but to verify and because auditing is not about self-policing. Like, supervision is about self-policing. And when we talk about verification, there's a few layers before auditing. We've got the operators should kind of self-police, and then the supervisors should police, and that's verification. And then, you've got maybe the managers, and then you've got the internal audit. So the internal audit is really about finding out where we're strong, where we're not strong, and practicing explaining what we're doing and making sure that we get stronger and stronger. And that's what Ryan is referring to. Like, once we're super strong, an external audit is not going to be painful, because the auditor's coming over and they're looking at things like, if we know our process so much better than any external auditors will ever know. Like, they're in the plant a day, 2 days, 3 days in the year. You've got 300 people in the plant, 24/7, for a whole year. You're going to know so much more about what's going on in that plant than an external auditor. If your programs are solid, then that external audit is not going to be painful. That's a huge benefit.
Oh, yeah.
It takes a little while to show it to your maintenance manager. But once they've bought in, then the value of internal audit is quite straightforward.
Yeah, exactly. And what's that saying? It's if you're flying on a jet aircraft and more than half of the fuel is expended by the plane getting up to the cruising altitude, right? So we've all been in the plane, right? And they hit the throttle and everybody, you kind of go back in the seat a little bit. That's where most of the fuel is used, right? Is getting up to cruising, and then the plane is fine, right? But getting there is the hard part. But once you're there, oh yeah, life is good.
So early in my career as a food safety inspector, I came across that same idea, and I'd never applied it to internal audit. And I'm very happy you're talking about that, because I've got an example in sanitation. So I work for AIB, so that's just just another company but when I started working for AIB had kind of the big reputation of being the most thorough inspections and that kind of stuff. And so we were we did some pretty good inspections, but it really, really often happened that always happened that in a new facility, we'd come in and we'd say, well, like, you haven't been doing this, you haven't been doing that. Like, we just point out areas that had been neglected. And going from not being, neglecting to the first cleanup, cleaning was a lot of work for the facility. But then when they had to maintain that level, it was a lot easier. So the first, like the difference between the first audit and the second audit was always tremendous in terms of just the visual appearance and the level of cleanliness in the plant. And then some people were saying, "Oh wow, we had to work so hard." Yeah, you had to work so hard, but now all you have to do is maintain it, and it's the same as your analogy with the fuel. Like maintaining is really easy. Makes me think of the difference between developing a program and back to, I think it was Bryan again who was talking about, like say what you do and then verify and then make sure you're doing it. Developing the program is not the same skills as maintaining a program. And you're going from here to here when you develop, and then when you maintain and you manage, you just stay on that level. And it's so much easier if the program is kind of aligned with what you're already doing. It's not so much work to maintain programs, but developing programs can be a lot of headaches.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm on an analogy kick here today, so let's see if I can keep the car one going.
Yeah,
so we know in our personal lives, right? So you need to maintain your car, right? So you have to go in for regular oil changes and get the preventive maintenance done and things like this. And then the car will last you a long time. If, however, you neglect those activities and you wait for the check engine light to come on, you're going to have a very large bill that's coming at some point.
Exact same idea. Yeah, exact same idea. You do a little trickle and it's really easy. You were talking about filings on the floor in the maintenance shop. It's not that difficult to clean the floor after, after using a tooling equipment that makes a lot of filings. It's mechanics, they don't want to do it because if they don't have to do it, they're not going to do it, or
right.
Often. But once they start doing it, like the cleanup, the maintaining of the cleaning is a lot easier than if you've got to strip everything down and start after, a year or 5 years of just.
Yeah, exactly.
The superficial clean, and then you've got to do the deep clean. There's grease everywhere. There's all kinds of stuff, and it's
and that's when I audit. That's one of the first areas I go to is the maintenance shop. If the maintenance shop is pristine and all the tools are put away and there's shadow boards and there's nothing on the floor, and you go into the manager's office and it's organized and beautiful, that's generally a pretty good indicator of what you're going to find in the rest of the plant.
So you're using the same logic as people take when they go in a restroom in a restaurant or something like that. If they manage, if the restroom is clean, they're probably keeping a clean kitchen.
Exactly. So you had mentioned, prepping and preparing the team, but then that next point on that as well is that training piece. Because if I do a good job of working with you, my maintenance manager, and say, "Yep, I'm all on board, I'm on the team," and I just say, "Okay, great, here's some procedures, go audit these," and you're like, right? Training. You have to train your team.
Yeah. So how would I say that? There's like, in order to make things, like, there's many steps, going from let's say working in silos and quality does all the audits, and then you've got like a multidisciplinary team where everybody's engaged and you're doing process audits, which is what you're referring to. Like, okay, here's the procedure, take this and go and audit that. Going from here to here, there's many steps, eh?
Yes.
And I would say going at it with small incremental steps is I'd say better, but I mean, I want to say it's an easier on the team, so it's going to be more productive than giving people a proceed, like trying to shoot for the process audits. The thing about process audits is they're a super powerful tool, but we probably want to keep it for high risk programs. So going and auditing a glass control procedure in a fluid dairy plant is probably not the best use of your time. Like, why don't we try to do a process audit on microcontrol rather than glass control? If you've got a completely enclosed process, that glass has been completely excluded. If you've got light bulbs or anything, they're all shatter resistant. Typically, it's not it's not a very high risk compared to microcontrol, or you could say to allergen control in a bakery.
Yeah.
There's a million different allergens. Well, not a million, but anyway, there's a lot of different allergens. They've got so many formulations with so many different allergen profiles. Auditing that using a process audit makes sense. But again, using that same approach for a lower risk program is a little bit, it's not misusing resources, but every standard says you need to have a risk-based approach to auditing, to internal auditing. And that risk-based approach can include using different methods, and using methods that go a little bit more quickly over the programs that are lower risk, where your focus is not to make sure that you're doing every single thing, like verifying every word in a procedure, but you're saying, okay, we think this is a lower risk. Let's just verify that there have been no issues, that people are generally aware of what's going on, and that we've got that one under control, so that we can focus more time on the higher risk, on the allergens, on the microcontrol. It could be on pest control in a flour mill. There's a lot of pests in a flour mill, and the more pests there are, the more pesticides we're going to use. And pesticides, like, we have to use them, but we also want to minimize the usage of pesticide to, because they're poisons after all. So, having a good pest control program in a flour mill is how we ensure that we make a reasonable use of pesticides in those mills. Those are higher risk programs than, every category has, and thankfully every category has some areas where you don't have to spend so much attention or so much time, because it allows you to focus on the higher risk. So
I like that. Yeah. So a good point that I'm getting out of that too, and that was a really good point, guys, is what Alex is talking about here too, right? Is, let's say that you have a brand new internal audit team. You need to help them to develop their auditing muscles, right? So don't start off with an extremely complex, complicated audit. Give them something that's relatively easy, so that, let's say, again, Alex is the maintenance manager, and I give you a process to audit in another area, and it's a pretty straightforward thing. And then you come out of that audit going, yeah, okay, this isn't too bad. This auditing thing makes sense. I have a better understanding of this other process now. And so build on wins.
The thing about auditing is we're always auditing areas where we're not the specialist. Okay, yeah. I'm verifying my own department. I'm the specialist in my department. I better be, but I'm auditing everybody else's department. So I need to be able to audit, so that the expectation has to be that I'm not a specialist in QA. If I'm the maintenance manager, I'm a maintenance manager. So I can look at what's happening in QA. And, if you show me a form and half of the boxes are empty, I don't need to understand a whole lot about QA to know that this is incomplete, and that's not a good thing. If the spec, like if the spec is on the form and it says, okay, the result should be between 1 and 4. As a maintenance manager, I can count up to 10. So if I see a 6, I can see that it's not between 1 and 4. So those are the kind of transferable skills that I can take to auditing your department without understanding what's going on. And then if I see a 6 where it should be where the spec is between 1 to 4, then I can say, well, what about that? That was not flagged. That should have been flagged. And if it's not flagged, then that's a deviation in itself,
Right.
How would you manage that? Then I can ask the questions, because it's always the same questions. And then you can say, oh, well, I should have done 1, 2, 3, 4. And then I say, well, you should have, I know enough as a maintenance manager that I should have is not a good answer. That's a very, very bad answer. What did you do? And if you didn't do what you were supposed to do, that's another deviation. I don't need, everybody doesn't need to be a specialist about auditing to be involved and to ask questions. And yeah.
Well, that's a good point. And so part of this too, right, and this gets back again, what we're talking about right now is this training piece of it. Is your job as the internal auditor is to be, you're learning, you're understanding these other processes. You're coming at it with curiosity and saying, hi, I'm learning about this. Teach me about what you're doing here. And to your point, there's wrong information on the form. Right. You're not going, rah, rah, rah. You're saying, gosh, I see that this says 1 to 4, but there's a 6. Why is that? Oh, yes. And there may be a good reason. Oh, that piece of equipment changed. Or, yeah, right, the process has changed. Or to your point, it's wrong, right?
But even if you say, oh yeah, the piece of equipment changed, well, I know that in my world, that in my PM program, when there's a new piece of equipment, I have to update my PM program. So
Yeah.
in quality, you should be updating your forms. So
Mhm.
maybe the result is good, but maybe it's the form that needs to be updated. That's still
Right.
feedback that, as a maintenance manager, if I understand what's going on in my department, I can transfer that and say, well, didn't you update the form, or what are you waiting for, Bryan?
Yeah, exactly. And we're achieving the objective of what we want for our internal audit. We're finding the errors in our system before someone else does, right? And what we're doing with this, and this is absolutely true in every plant, is the farther you get away from the floor, the less accurate the information. So the plant manager understands how things ran last month, and as you go down the chain, you get closer and closer to the truth of how it's actually running now. And that's just the nature of how we need to do things. The plant manager can't understand everything everywhere going on. And that's part of what you're doing, is lifting up the rug and seeing what's really going on underneath.
There was a question here about, like, can we implement food safety management system if everybody doesn't understand the programs? The thing is, everybody needs to understand their own responsibilities. So if I'm an operator, I need to know what my role as an operator is.
Yeah.
Presumably, I'm going to have a task that is about this simple, and my role is to know that what I'm supposed to be doing, know the rules, the general rules, the good manufacturing practices, have my eyes wide open and be able to recognize problems. And if there's a problem, I need to report it. If I don't do that, there is no amount of supervision, there's no amount of management, there's no amount of internal audit that's going to compensate for me not doing the right thing. If I'm chewing gum and spitting it in the soup, the supervisor is not going to go and fish it out. No, but really, like, that's what it comes down to. If I'm not, it doesn't have to be that dramatic, but if I'm not doing my job, nobody can come in and compensate for me. If the supervisor is not holding their own teams accountable, there's no amount of internal audit that's going to compensate for supervisors not supervising. Now, again, like, operators' role is this much, supervisors is a little bit more, they hold their teams accountable. Managers are a little bit more because they look at the bigger picture, like the bigger trends. And then you've got the internal audit. If you're trying to impose that big vision on everybody, the fire hose approach where everybody needs to know everything, that's not going to work.
No.
But you can't, at the same time, everybody needs to know what their job is. And that takes us to the concept of competency, which is an excellent and very interesting topic for another day.
Right. And so with this, right, is very quickly, and then we'll get to the summary here, guys, is there's a side benefit to this. This teaches the management team and your internal audit team the language of auditors. So when a professional auditor like Alex comes into the facility, they can have conversations with that person and they can understand what the auditor wants and what the auditor is asking for, and that trust but verify, right?
Yeah, but I would say, Bryan, it teaches the managers the language of food safety, but it's better than that. Okay, so because the auditor, like I always say, auditing is just verification. It's not that important. Okay, it's important, but that's not why we do it. We want to speak the language of the external auditor because we need to manage that certification side. But it's important to teach our management team the language of food safety before teaching them the language of auditing. But better than teaching them, they can then appropriate, and they can say, in our facility, this is what pest control means. The pests we have, I don't know, like we have this, and that. That's what pest control means. And when the auditor says, well, do you have this thing here? And why don't you? Well, you can say, well, we don't, because this is what we've got to manage. This is what our risk is. And this one here is not a risk for us. And so if they appropriate the language, then they can take control of the external audit in the sense that they don't, like, it's not the tail, the dog, it's not the tail wagging the dog. It's not the auditor saying, well, I think you should. It's like, no. Let me tell you what risk is for us. And let us tell you what risk is for us, and let us show you how we manage it. And that's what really should happen. Like, that is the dynamic in a good verification setting.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was going to say, and unfortunately we're out of time here now, but I was going to say, Alex, how would you summarize everything? But what you just said was perfect.
The summary.
Perfect summary. So unfortunately, guys, yeah, we're out of time. But so hopefully we've given kind of a little bit of insight here into auditing and why, and importantly, how you can work and persuade the other members of your team why this is a benefit, right? Because it's a huge benefit within your company. And if you're successful in this, you're going to be, it's going to just pay dividends in all kinds of different areas for sure. Any other final closing thoughts, Alex, or anything?
Well, you say why? Like, it's really hard to be successful at managing food safety every day without a strong internal audit program. So, that's the selling point.
Perfectly said. So with that, everybody, this brings our chat to a close for this week. And what a fantastic guest. Thank you, Alex. This was a great conversation. And thank you to everybody who joined us on the chat as well. The interaction and the comments here, wonderful. Really, really appreciate it. And we appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to invest and improve on your food safety knowledge as well. So with that, everybody, we'll close out the chat here for this week, and we'll be back here next Friday at the same time on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Twitter. And we live stream at 10 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Mountain Time. And we will bring on another expert next week for a food safety chat. So in the meantime, enjoy your weekend. Have a great time. You've earned it. And we will see you back here next Friday. Thanks again, Alex. And thanks, everybody. We'll see you next week.